Hey there, patrons. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another bonus episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast, exclusive, of course, to our patrons only. Andrew Claudio, hello, sir.
Good morning, John. How are you, sir? You sound as good as you've sounded in about a week.
Which I'm surprised by because I did not get to sleep until 2:30 last night. We're recording this, of course, the day after the Knicks lost to the Bucks.
Yeah.
And you know, talk about insult to injury. My computer decided to be like running at a third speed last night as I was clipping the game and what have you. And I don't know if you've ever encountered the situation where you're afraid to restart the computer because it may just crap out, and you're like, then I can't do anything. So it's like, I'm just going to sit and deal with this. And sure enough, before I went to bed, I restarted it and it started working fine.
There's an early portion of my time working here that all of our production work was done on a laptop. So,
oh dear God.
Like editing videos, usually the export time was like an hour and 15 minutes. And I forget the one episode that was, it's probably a 90-minute episode that we did.
Oh, I think I remember this. Yeah.
So I told you, like, because it required so many cuts, so many edits, and so many inserts into Adobe, that it gave me like a 3-hour runtime of exporting. And I was like, all right, I'll go watch Lord of the Rings in the meantime, because there's nothing I can do.
And you still didn't finish it because that movie's like.
Exactly. I got through half of the movie.
There you go.
Point is, yes, technology can be a bitch sometimes, but
all this is to say, I'm very happy to be on here talking about the general NBA because I am not. Well, the Knicks will come up in this conversation, but I'm in the mood to talk about some other stuff. How about that?
And I hope people are in the mood to hear about some other stuff because, look, let this be your escape, everybody. Let this be
my escape.
It's going to be for us. Let's remember we're all basketball fans second, while we're Knicks fans first. Yes. And we're gonna give you guys a break from the agita that is the Knicks starting lineup. And we'll do our best to get your minds off of things, and we'll just talk about the first sixth of the NBA season,
which is crazy that we're already here. It has gone pretty quick, but I'm happy that we are doing this episode at this time because I don't feel like we're talking about a representative sample size quite yet, because we're still seeing like wild fluctuations. Again, speak of the Knicks. I think we're really close to learning what we need to learn about a lot of the players in this league and a lot of the teams in this league. But before we get to some individual awards, which is going to be the theme of this episode, way too early awards after the first six of the season, I believe we have some storylines to hit. Do we not?
We do. Yes. So what we're going to try and do is hit the three biggest stories in the NBA every week going forward.
Yes.
We'll start off with the most talked about, the most popular, the most heavily discussed stories going forward. The top of the show will be John and whoever else is with them, most likely me, discussing the three biggest NBA stories over the last week.
And I will not push back too much on your number one in your ranking. I will just say that I may not have been my number one because I am not one for tomfoolery as much as some. I love a good bit of tomfoolery, but I'm not as into the tomfoolery as others. That's all.
I'm so lost on what you think isn't the number one story in the NBA over the last week.
Well, I'm pretty sure you're going to have Jokic or the Jokic brothers, I should say, versus the Morris brothers as the number one story.
Yes. The incident that happened at the end of the Nuggets Heat game on Monday night has.
What is that if not tomfoolery?
That is tomfoolery. All right. So this is where Lowe versus Simmons comes in, and you would rather break down the X's and O's of the Warriors 10-1 start. And I'm like, they fighting, so this is something we have to discuss and react to.
Oh no, we have to discuss it and react to it. I completely agree. I guess this is here's where I struggle with this. Like, what do you say about this? It's Nikola Jokic being Nikola Jokic and it's Markieff Morris being Markieff Morris, and those two paths intersecting. And now, like, do we need to analyze the fight itself? Like,
so, a couple questions, and I'll just throw it to you.
Sure.
First off, in the moment, did you think Jokic was a dirty thing, and it was not justified based off of what Morris did to him first?
It was absolutely justified.
Okay. Did you think that the suspension was justified? 1 game?
Yes, because you have to you have to suspend him after. It was just, it's like maybe those two things run counter to some people, but it's like he absolutely had to do what he did after Markieff did what he did. And especially like, again, we're not talking about a fucking choir boy here. This is Markieff Morris. Both him and his brother have done a lot of stupid, idiotic shit over the course of the time they've been in there in the NBA. So yeah, I do think it kind of impacts not to get off topic, but there was a moment in the Bucks game where like Derrick Rose, I think as a Bucks player, was like going to call a timeout in the midst of this crazy Knicks run, like maybe bumped the guy a little bit or something. And he like went over to make sure he knew that it wasn't like a dirty play. And this is the opposite of that, this is Markieff Morris. So like, yeah, Jokic absolutely, like, was he not going to react? But then at the same time, if you're the league, what are you going to do? Not react to?
Well, you're hitting on the fascinating part for me. And it's that the Morris brothers, God bless them, have been the symbol of like enforcers in the NBA since they got into the NBA.
Hate that term.
Whatever the
it's
21
such a stupid fucking term.
Right, but whatever the 2021 version of enforcers is, they think that like there's this infamous story of them fighting the football team when they were at Kansas, and they were back to back fighting off one by one, and like that has been their role. And the irony of what Markieff Morris did is he committed a hard foul, a bit of a cheap shot, a cheap shot, and then turned his back because he's throughout his time in the league always expected either his brother to be right behind him watching his back, or never expecting a retaliation. But what he didn't realize is that he picked the wrong one, is that he picked this giant that fights bears in the off season and got the hardest retaliation that he's ever gotten probably in his entire life.
And which is why, as if I wasn't already enough of a fan of Nikola Jokic, I'm an even bigger one now. I just one more point before we move on to the next story. The reason I hate that term, because there are no more enforcers in the NBA.
That's why I said the 2021 version.
Enforcers went away in the 90s. And really probably before that, in like the late 80s, early 90s, if you want to get technical.
I think the Oakley.
I was about to say, the league started to litigate out that style of play. Really, if we're being honest, after the 94 finals and after.
You don't think it was after the early 2000s? Like the Mounts of the Palace, I think was the last allowed fight going forward, because then the league was like, all right, we got to stop playing.
Yeah, but that was an off-court thing. And I think, well, obviously that brand of basketball was very ugly and those games were low scoring and all that stuff. I don't think what you saw and what you were allowed to do rather in the NBA as a player in the early 2000s, I still think it was a far cry from what you were allowed to do through the late 80s and maybe if you want to get into the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my 2 cents on that.
Right. Fair. Do
we have to talk about this?
Yes, it's a story, John. I know you don't like the minutia and the scuttlebutt of the NBA, but this is a story.
But this actually is meaningful to me because so we're going to talk about Scottie Pippen and his press tour, I guess. Mm-hmm. I've defended Scottie a lot over the years. I've been a Scottie guy. I have been in the camp of like, is Scottie Pippen a top 30 all-time player? I don't know. Maybe. How would we know, right? This is my point that I was making to Yash on the text thread last week. How do we know? We don't know what Scottie would have been on his own team. And because what we have from Scottie is second best guy on the greatest team greatest modern team of all time, right? Put the Celtics of the 60s and 50s and 60s aside. We're always going to have that one if, and he always gets the benefit of that doubt. And why does he get the benefit of that doubt? For better or worse? Because he played with the greatest player of all time. Just take your gift and go the fuck home and shut up. about it. And no. And now it's like, of all the guys you're going to be like, come on, you're going to be smirched this guy? I get you have issues with him personally. But to me, this just makes Scottie look like an absolute clown, an absolute and utter clown. And I don't want to say I feel bad for him because I don't, but it's like, to me, this is sad what's happening right now.
Real quick, to those who are not caught up with what's going on with Scottie Pippen, he has a memoir called Unguarded coming out. I think it's available for pre-order or it's already available for you to buy. It is in my cart. I'm fascinated to see whether or not I actually will pull the trigger on buying this because he won't shut up about
God bless if you do.
He won't shut up about what's in it. So there might not be a point. The quote from a recent GQ article, which is just one of the many interviews he's given. I'll read it real quick. Each episode, he's very frustrated with the edit he got in The Last Dance and how he and Steve Kerr and Tony Kukoc and the rest of the supporting cast with the Bulls were looked at as throwaways. And Michael got an edit that helped him look great, which
it was his fucking documentary.
Right. I'm not upset at all. I think that's why everybody tuned in, was that it was the Michael Jordan documentary, while it being a Chicago Bulls documentary. Mike also got paid to do like $10 million to do The Last Dance, and Scottie and the rest of the crew volunteered their time to do it. This is just details I'm throwing out there. The quote: each episode was the same. Michael on a pedestal, his teammates secondary, smaller. The message no different from when he referred to us back then as his supporting cast. From one season to the next, we received little to no credit whenever we won, but the bulk of the criticism when we lost. Now, here I was in my mid-50s, 17 years since my final game, watching us being demeaned once again. Living through it the first time was insulting enough. Over the next few weeks, I spoke to a number of my former teammates who each felt as disrespected as I did. How dare Michael treat us that way after everything we did for him and his precious brand?
Yeah. So, why, where my issue is with that, aside from the obvious stuff, my issue with that is we got the blame when we lost. That's actually really not true, because one, in the last 8 years, the last 6 full years of Michael's career, he did not lose. I'm putting aside the Wizards stuff, and that has nothing to do with this because they weren't his teammates at that point. And then the 1 year they lost with Michael, 94-95 to the Magic, Michael got a lot of the blame. He was the one who faltered late. He got the ball stolen from him. Like he shot it poor. Like it's a nonsense statement. It's not accurate. The reason why Michael Jordan is revered the way he is and looked at the way he is, and why they are looked at as a supporting cast, is because he never lost, and the supporting cast largely changed. It's, in fact, every one of them changed with the exception of Scottie Pippen. So I get. But again, none of those other guys get in the conversation of the top 250 players of all time, let alone the top 50 players of all time, let alone the top 30 players of all time, which again, Scottie has that benefit of that doubt. And I think he should be happy with it.
I've tried to psychoanalyze where he's coming from here, and you look at the other second bananas throughout history, Magic and Kareem, there is no real second banana.
That's a different,
right? They're both all-time greats. Kareem was in a different part of his career while still being like super productive throughout the 80s. And Magic, like his entire thing was being a supporting cast. So he could be the greatest facilitator ever.
Yeah.
And be more than happy to pass the rock. But like, we don't talk about Kevin McHale the way we talk about Scottie Pippen. We don't talk about Klay Thompson the way we talk. We just did a whole.
Thompson didn't even make the fucking snaps. Tony Parker. How do you think Tony fucking Parker feels? Tony Parker was a goddamn Finals MVP, won 4 championships with the San Antonio Spurs. Come on.
So as a result, I almost wonder if Scottie in his head felt like he picked up a lot of the slack during the 90s that Michael left for him to do because of Michael's personality. Michael was very much like, at all costs, we're going to win. Even if I have to like ruin a person's life, destroy a person's psyche, make this guy in practices living hell. So it was a good cop, bad cop. And so Scottie felt his entire career being the good cop, that would be rewarded someday. And here he is in his 50s, like, oh no, I was just tossed to the side. And now I mean, look, there's also a fact that he's in his 50s. How many 50-year-olds, guys in their 50s are just kind of fed up? It's like, listen, I'm unfiltered now. I got nothing to lose. I'm just going to say what I've actually thought this entire time.
And I think what this really is he's in his 50s and this is a cash grab. And I think if you read his interview to the New York Times, which is, my God, an astounding piece of reading, it makes it very clear that Scottie doesn't know what the hell he thinks. He said some stuff and he knew if he said certain things, it would sell books. And it is going to sell books because people like you have it in your cart.
Is this the interview where he calls Phil Jackson racist?
No, it's where he quibbled. If he doesn't know what he said, but he's confronted about the statement. And then he's like, well, I did not mean it, but and then he can't answer a straight question because he doesn't know what the fuck he thinks. Again, there are people who look at the 93-94 season and see, I think he finished third in MVP that year. And they're like, well, if he finished third in MVP that year, maybe he could have finished first or second and they could have done even better. I would argue the opposite. I would argue that was the best Scottie was ever going to do with a team that had the biggest chip on its shoulder in NBA history as they went into that season. They were a collective unit. They knew how to play with each other. They had a great coach. And they maxed out with a second round exit and Scottie Pippen getting third in MVP. I think you could make the case that if he plays his entire career and he's the best player on a team and he's surrounding with a pretty good team, he's Dominique Wilkins. Not same type of player, obviously, better defender and, not as aerial and whatever. But and guess what? Nick didn't make top 50. So again, if the argument for Scottie, if his position is like, I don't like how I'm perceived historically, I think that's absolute bullshit. I think he gets the benefit of the doubt because of the way his career went. And it's just, this is all sour grapes. And again, a cash grab.
I don't disagree at all. I think looking back on his career, he will think he was 1A or 1B to one of the greatest dynasties in NBA history. And in reality, good for him that your own self-perception is bigger. You'd rather that than, I guess, and personally, I'd rather think of myself as 1B. But look, we talk about this all the time. The disease of more, the disease, the Pat Riley thing that he talked about. Let's use a weird correlation, but think of Knicks Film School. The reason the four of us work so well together is we all know our roles here. There's no reaching up here. We're all in our specific spots.
Chris is the star and we are the Percy and heirs.
Yes. I'm Steve Kerr. You're Judd Butchler.
Bill Cartwright.
Yeah. Jeremy's Will Purdue. And then Chris is over there. We're being Michael Jordan. And
he's Jordan and Pippen in one, actually.
Exactly. Might even be Phil when you really think about it.
Player coach.